Valerianus Rufus, Maecenas, and Gaius Chaerea, the other warriors of the sect of Mars Ultor, the group into which he had been accepted. That would have been more honorable for a warrior like him. But he was certain that his job wouldn't lessen the pleasure of sinking his blade into the throat of that swine. A man Caesar had promoted to exalted positions, first as his right-hand man, then as proconsul of Gaul, only to be repaid by being stabbed to death. Ortwin was proud of having meted out the same punishment to Trebonius only a few months earlier in Asia. And now it was Decimus Brutus's turn. They had once fought side by side in Gaul during Caesar's proconsulship more than a decade ago. But that coward had been on the run for months now, fleeing the net that Mark Antony and Lepidus had tightened around him after the siege of Medina. A strange war, that. Ortwin, who had been in the East at the time, had only heard tell of it, and wasn't at all sure he understood what had happened. Decimus Brutus had gone to Gaul, which had been assigned to him by the man he later killed. But Mark Antony, who wanted the province for himself, attacked and besieged him at Medina. In response, the Senate dispatched the two new consuls, Hirtius and Pansa, later joined by Octavian, to take on Antony. After a series of battles, they had forced Antony to flee, but Hirtius and Pansa were both killed in battle. And in a strange twist of fate, Decimus Brutus ended up being saved by the very man who had most wanted him dead. Octavian. It was a short-lived reprieve, though, and as soon as young Octavian was appointed consul, he declared Decimus Brutus an enemy of the state, along with all the others who had participated in Caesar's murder. Mistrustful of Antony, he had set his best assassin onto Brutus's trail, keen to ensure that his revenge was carried out. "Are you sure that's Bauto's village?" Velleida's question brought him back to their more immediate concerns. It wasn't like when he was Caesar's chief bodyguard. Now, he was a mere executioner, and had to act, not think. "Yes, that's what the woodcutter told me yesterday," he replied, trying to look more confident than he felt, especially in front of the men Octavian had assigned him. "He said it was the only settlement we would find on this part of the Rhine. Bauto considers himself a king around here, and won't let anyone build near his palace." "Palace?" snorted Velleida, tilting her chin at the humble wood and mud house set between several surrounding huts. The shapes of the buildings were blurred by the morning mist, which lay thickly on the banks of the mighty river. "If that's a palace, my father must have lived in an imperial mansion," she quipped. Ortwin smiled and urged his horse on towards the village. Over time, Velleida had lost her sense of proportion. The residence of her father, the supreme leader of the Suebi, hadn't been much more refined, not even when he'd taken control of several Gallic tribes. "The truth is that you've become accustomed to Roman houses, or at least those of the richest Gauls," he said cautiously, knowing how much the subject annoyed her. "And we both know that a Roman plebeian allows himself more luxuries than a German nobleman." The woman kept quiet, and Ortwin knew why. She would never have openly admitted that the Romans, the very people responsible for destroying her father and her dreams of glory, were superior to the barbarians. This was a simple truth he'd learned through experience, but for her, it was a reality she refused to accept. There were no sentries at the entrance to the village, which had no moat, but was roughly circled by a low fence. Evidently, Bauto wasn't worried about anyone from the area threatening his authority. Or, perhaps, he was just unprepared. In any case, they were strangers, and it didn't seem right to barge into the village unannounced. Ortwin stopped about 200 yards from the fence and ordered one of the Celtic troops from Octavian's guard to enter the village and ask, on his behalf, for an interview with the chief. He looked on as his man entered the open gateway, noticing movement inside as he did so. He continued watching and saw his envoy speak.